Hi, Jackie. Hi, Mary. Alicia Beasel, my boo. Captain Lee. Farm wife, Larky. I was trying to find scary music. I'll turn it off in a second when I'm reading. Mary Tackett wanted me to have a candle. I know, Alicia. Yeah, it all fell down, all the bricks. Hi, Denise Renee. Okay, I'm going to try to turn the sound off. Get back to it.
Hi. Fun out of your music.
Yeah. How can I stop? I don't know how to stop it though. Delete brand? No, I don't want to delete it, right?
I don't know.
See, that just goes back to the comments. Just delete brand probably, right?
I guess.
How do you stop it? Oh, duh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You always figure it out.
Hi, guys.
Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go.
Okay, have fun.
Okay. Oh, I had one more candle. Everything's on the reverse. Denise Renee said, hi, Lexi.
Hello. Hopefully don't move the screen again.
Yeah. Here we go, guys. Yeah, Alicia, go ahead, get a candle. Oh, Jackie Burns, did you get my message in Slack? That your thing, it came back, what I mailed you, came back today. Wrong house number. I sent you a picture of it, just so you know I'm telling you the truth. So I have to resend it. And they covered up the address on it, so I don't even know what I wrote. I know I had the right one, but maybe they couldn't read it. Yeah, so I did send it, and it came all the way back to me. When you look at the picture, you'll see I'm not making it up. Okay. And for anyone listening on a replay, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the stories and you have a nice, relaxing day or night, whatever you're doing. And thank you for coming to listen. Let's see. I want to find something kind of spooky, guys. It seems like there's only a few good stories in here, you know, in these. I don't know. I'm going to be there, I promise. Hi, easily distracted. Yeah, Mary tried to make it spooky for you. Ooh, well, this sounds spooky. I don't know yet, though, if it is, of course. I hate the way this goes. I can't get the candle where you can see it. Everything's opposite. And I want to rest this book so it's not hard to hold. The Express Train to Hell. This is New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. Pa drove us to the train station in his new buggy, much to the delight of my small son, who sat in the seat beside him and helped him drive. Alicia. I gotta watch the story though. I've gotten complaints that I'm not reading all the way through. I'm taking too long, and people are flipping over to other story readers because they say that they go right through. They don't stop. So I'm going to try to be like them. I'm so sorry. And I apologize. Ma wanted to come with us, but she was so pale by the time we finished serving dessert that Pa and I both insisted she go straight to bed. Ma had felt poorly for some time, and my wife and I visited as often as we could with our children. I would have to lift this up. It's hurting my neck. I'm sorry. Hurt my neck like that to see you guys. But the candles are still going. I need something right here, to put them on. It was late when we left my folks' place, and later still when we finally boarded the train for home. Timmy, who had just turned 4, lay against my shoulder fast asleep. Baby Cecily was awake in my wife's arms, cooing contentedly. Her grandma had been right pleased to see the little tyke, and I didn't regret lingering over a late dinner. I wasn't sure how much longer Ma would be with us, and I wanted to make the most of the time we had left. My folks had asked us to stay the night with them, but I needed to be at work early in the morning, so Hannah and I had declined their invitation. Oh, sorry, Alicia. Do it on the stove. My folks had asked us to stay okay, it was nearly midnight when we pulled into the Newark Central Station where we had to switch trains. I settled Hannah and the children in a seat near the tracks and navigated my way through the crowd to look for a timetable. I quickly discovered that the next train to home didn't leave until 12:15 a.m. Good thing I found a seat for Hannah and the kids, I thought, as I hurried back toward my family. Suddenly, a ragged old man leapt out of the crowd and seized the lapel of my jacket. "It's coming for me," he shrieked into my face with breath that stank of alcohol. "It's coming." "Now see here, fella," I exclaimed, trying to pull him off. "I done wrong," the man said, his fingers digging painfully into my chest. "I killed a man who cheated me at cards, and now I'm going to pay." Hi, Haley. "Get off me," I cried, pushing him as hard as I could. He was unnaturally strong for such a wiry little man. He pressed his wrinkled face close to mine, and I was nearly overpowered by his terrible stench. He surely had not washed any time this decade. "It's coming for me," he roared. "The express train for hell is coming for my soul. You've got to help me." At that moment, the station master and several men came to my rescue, pulling the old man away and apologizing profusely. "I'm so sorry, sir," the station master said, brushing dirt from my coat. "That old tramp has been here for the last several days. We keep chasing him off the property, but he sneaks back when we aren't looking. He's crazy but harmless. Can I get you a drink or escort you to a seat?" "Hi, Davida." No, I'm fine," I said, after murmuring several more reassurances. I managed to break away from the station master and rejoin Hannah and the children. "What was that about?" asked Hannah, who had observed the encounter but was too far away to hear the exchange between myself and the tramp. "Some crazy old guy wanted me to save him from the express train to hell," I told her. "He seemed to think it was coming for him because he'd killed a man who was cheating him at cards." "That's terrible," Hannah said. She shuddered and hugged the baby closer. I picked up little Timmy, who lay asleep by her side, and settled him into my lap without waking him. "The station master said he'd been hanging around here for days. They'll probably have to call the police if he keeps accosting people," I added. I leaned against the back of the seat and gazed out over the darkened tracks. The 11:50 train blew its whistle, and a hiss of steam accompanied it as it chugged away from the station. I yawned, wishing that our train would come quickly. It had been a long, stressful day. I found it hard to watch Ma's declining health, especially when there was nothing any of us could do to save her. Hannah leaned against me and shut her eyes. At 2 minutes to midnight, we were both awakened by terrible shouting. "It's coming for me! It's coming!" The old tramp leapt onto the platform a few feet away from us. "The express train for hell is coming for my soul." All over the platform, dozing passengers sat up and looked around sleepily for the source of the noise. Then a new sound introduced itself, a long whistle blowing once, twice. I was startled. The next train wasn't due until 12:05. It must be arriving early, I thought. Alicia, I a heart made wise. The old tramp started. Oh, here's the illustration. Express train to hell. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. It's not going to work. I got to figure something else out. I'm going to just put it out because I'm afraid I'm going to knock it over on this Kleenex box. Sorry, Mary. I'll get something figured out. Okay, Jackie, thank you. The old tramp started screaming again when he heard the whistle. We could hear the roar and chug of a steam train approaching fast, approaching too fast to stop at the station. "It's a runaway," I thought, jumping up with Timmy in my arms and grabbing Hannah and the baby. As I dragged them away from our seat near the tracks, the station master and his two helpers ran onto the platform and took hold of the old tramp. The whistle sounded again. A warm rush of air blew against everyone near the platform as an invisible train passed directly in front of us. We heard the hiss of the steam and the screech of flanges against iron rails. We felt the wind whipping our hair and faces, but we saw nothing. I blinked in amazement. To my left, the old tramp gave a terrible wail. Then he vanished, leaving the two station assistants empty handed. The noise of the invisible train faded into the distance and then ceased. Baby Cecily woke up and started whimpering, her little voice the only sound on the now quiet platform. I glanced at the station clock. It was midnight. One of the assistants broke the eerie silence. Where did he go? He was right here. I had him in my hands. Where did he go? Oh, thank you, Elizabeth G. I love you too. The station master was staring blankly at the tracks. Good Lord, he was right. It did come for him, he said aloud. He pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his sweating, bald head with it. What came for him? Shouted the hysterical assistant. The express train to hell, said the station master. He shook his head, and that seemed to bring him to his senses. Get a hold of yourself, man, he added crisply to his assistant. You and George go back into the station and pour yourselves a drink. He pushed the two men through the station door. Then he noticed the dazed and frightened passengers. He turned and said, Nothing to worry about, folks. It was just an express train passing through. The next train will be here in 5 minutes. The station master's reassuring manner calmed everyone. People turned away from the empty tracks and settled back into their seats, whispering to each other about the strange events that had taken place. Did I just see what I think I saw? Asked Hannah. If you mean an invisible train running through the station and picking up a passenger for hell, then yes, you did, I replied. Another train whistle drowned out the last few words. Everyone on the platform shrieked and leapt to their feet in fear, but a moment later, a very real headlight illuminated the midnight darkness, and the reassuringly solid bulk of a steam engine pulled slowly up to the platform. The conductor dismounted, and several passengers shuffled off the 12:05 a.m. train. Cautiously, the large family that had been seated next to us approached the train. The mother felt all along the side of the passenger car to make sure it was real before she allowed her sleepy children to board. The conductor shook his head and said to me, You see all sorts of strange things in this job. That lady acts as if she doesn't believe the train is solid. He returned to his post, still shaking his head, and the train slowly moved off. I want to go home, Hannah said, huddling into the crook of my arm. I don't want to stay in this crazy haunted station. Me neither, I said, holding her close. We waited in silence until our own train pulled in, and then I swept my family inside, vowing to take a different route home next time. I never wanted to see the express train to hell again. Hey, Steph. Hi, good morning, Leslie. Did it really? Oh, good. I'm so glad, Leslie. Yay. Yay, yay, yay. Hope it makes you happy. As our train chugged away from Newark Central, I glanced back at the dark platform and felt a sudden stab of pity for the poor old tramp. Then I wondered if there was an express train to heaven. If so, I knew that was the train that would come for my ma someday soon. See if I can find another one that's any good. Don't want no boring ones. I always get nervous when I'm looking for one because I imagine somebody saying, Can't she have these picked out already? Um, Leslie, to Scooter Chick, just like my name, at gmail.com. Yeah, I don't want to read about the devil. No, not tonight, devil. No. Um, 1 second. Sorry. Are you going to listen, Carolyn, until you fall asleep? Don't go to bed. Just lay on the massage chair and listen. I try to find ones that I think aren't going to be boring. Okay, let's see. Okay, some of these I've already read. Now I'm getting nervous. Okay, we're not going to. New Jersey's is off. We're going to Michigan again. Okay, how about now it's taking longer than ever. I've never taken this long. Um, um, I did take Ambien. How did you know, Kevin? You guys know me too well. You do. Okay, we're just going to read this one. It might be kind of good. The staircase from I only took a tiny little piece of it. Only a little piece. The staircase from Grand Haven, Michigan. We're in Michigan now, guys. Yes, Elizabeth, it is. I was ready to pick this candle up and drink it. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let me get a drink. Yes, Elisa. Alicia. I don't take it that often. The only other time was that other time. I don't know when that was, but it was a couple of weeks ago, I think. Because I have to make them last. She is stuffy. She last week, Alicia. It's still a week away. Okay, the staircase, Grand Haven. The Peterson case. Oh, said he took Ambien or something. It felt as if he had been climbing the staircase forever. First one dragging step and then another, up and up. There was a groove worn in the middle of each one, as if many people had climbed this way before. Walked this way before. The light around him was dim, always dim. It was hard to see his surroundings. The air was fresh, and there was the faintest breath of wind against his cheeks. Gray trees and bushes seemed to press in on the staircase from either side. He could make out nothing else save this infernal staircase stretching up and up as far as his eye could see. He is not here. He wished that he could remember why he was climbing the stairs, or when he started, or how he got there. If he was honest with himself, something he refrained from doing whenever possible, he even wished he could remember who he was. Ooh, I like this one. He dodged that thought, or tried to, burying himself in the task at hand. Keep climbing. Don't stop. Lift one foot, then the next. Ignore the drag of gravity. Ignore the red hot thigh muscles and the tension in the lower back. Just climb. Hi, A.L. Skinner, 1981. Welcome. Nice to have you join us. But it didn't help. Oh, here's an illustration. The staircase. Why won't it go? See this, Carolyn? It's mirrored on StreamYards. I wanted to do StreamYards because I was playing a little music in the beginning, trying to get people in the mood. Guys. But it didn't help. His unknown identity teased him from the edge of consciousness, and he did not like what he saw, not one bit. Something about this endless climb, this dim light, the oddly fresh air. Something about this endless climb, this dim light, the oddly fresh air with its hint of foreign spices, was forcing him to face honesty for the first time since early childhood. His mind shied away from that honesty, but the staircase wouldn't let him hide it from himself. Not anymore. Climb, he told himself, just climb. But inside his mind, he saw the shining, innocent face he presented to his teachers when he denied all knowledge, of why his classmates' arms were so badly bruised she couldn't hold her books. They thought her father must be hitting her, and they made a lot of trouble for that family. No one believed that a little boy could be hurting her, and the girl was too afraid to speak up. Eventually, the family packed their belongings and moved on. He shied away from the memory of the girl's fear, though it had never bothered him before. In fact, he had secretly gloated over it, wishing he could make his brilliant little sister, whom his parents idolized, Hi, Felicia, look at him with the same fear. He hated her. He hated her, and he could not touch her. His parents divorced when he was in the 6th grade, and his mother and sister moved far away. Yet she was the one his father always talked about, boasted about, was proud of. Climb, he told himself, wiping the sweat from his forehead and pushing the wretched thoughts away. Just climb. The gray trees loomed around him, and he thought he caught glimpses of his sister's face in their shadows. The wind rustled through the trees, through the leaves, and he heard his sister's mocking voice in the sound. She had teased him relentlessly for being so dumb, for getting average grades, for not being very good at sports. He pushed himself, mounting the staircase as fast as he could to avoid the buried memories, keeping his eyes on the grooves in each warm stair. Once he clapped his hands over his ears to shout out his little sister's mocking voice. He was the elder, but she was the better. Her theme song from the moment she could talk. The wind died down suddenly, and his sister's voice faded. When he dared glance at the gray trees, all he saw was gnarled bark. He slowed his steps, the muscles of his legs screaming in agony. He had to rest. There was no landing in sight, so he sat down on the staircase itself. It felt cool and pleasant to his touch, and his legs trembled with exhaustion as he stretched them. Would this wretched climb never end? He wondered, peering into the dimness surrounding him. Would he never make it to the top? He drew in a calming breath, and with it came another memory, another face from his unknown past. Another girl staring at him in terror. He leapt abruptly to his feet and started climbing again, thrusting the memory away. Somehow, in this dim light, he saw her terror for what it was, and it no longer gave him pleasure. Quite the reverse. The girl's screams for mercy followed him as he stumbled upward. The wind rose around him, and now he heard the voices of all his victims, screaming in anger and pleading with him to stop. Some prayed, some wept. He howled aloud himself, running upward with his hands clapped over his ears, trying to blot out the voices. In the gray woods, he now saw the girls and the women he had killed, their spirits hovering just above the ground, fingers pointed, eyes judging, mouths open to condemn. Not helpless now. They were coming for him. He had to reach the top of the staircase before they reached him. His soul writhed within him, and the guilt he had never felt before overwhelmed him all at once. He screamed again and fled upward as fast as his legs could carry him. His body slumped almost in half as he tried to bear the horrible pain radiating out from his gut, from his chest, from his mind. The stairs above his head seemed brighter suddenly, and his heart thundered with hope. It was the top of the staircase, and he was almost out of this terrible place, almost out. Above him, radiant light suddenly burst forth, as if someone had opened a door, and he slowed on the steps and then stopped. The light swirled and pulsed like a living thing, and in its brilliance, he suddenly saw himself clearly for the very first time. In that blinding moment, he knew himself as others knew him, and he wanted to die. Ooh, that scared me when I just saw myself. I was so into this going up the stairs. He was a perverted, filthy, worthless creature with no goodness anywhere in his being. He tried to scream, but nothing came out of his throat. And then he saw her, his little sister, descending the staircase toward him. She appeared as she had when he last saw her alive, her body broken and bleeding, her face bruised beyond recognition. Ugh. He had triumphed at her downfall, but now the sight of her made him tremble with agony, with remorse. All the gloating hatred he had felt when he killed her, his final victim, melted away before the look in her eyes as she descended toward him in the gloriously radiant light. She held out her hand toward him, and he backed away, stumbling down the stairs. She said something, but he did not hear her words. He had turned now and was running back down the staircase, unable to face her. He deserved her condemnation, deserved every hard thing she had ever said to him in life. But that was not what sent him flying away from her. In that final moment, he feared something even worse than her condemnation. He feared her forgiveness, and he could not live with that. He was her murderer, and not just that, he was a serial killer who had stalked any girl or woman who reminded him of his sister. There could be no forgiveness for him, not from her, not from God, not from anyone, and certainly never from himself. He ran, stooped over, stumbling down a staircase which no longer seemed to go on forever. It seemed short, too short. He could already see the bottom and the gaping, red-hot doorway rimmed with brimstone and fire that awaited him. His victims lined the staircase on either side, standing tall and triumphant as he raced past them toward the door. The very last one in line was his little sister, and their eyes met once, just before he stepped through the door. Ooh, that one was good. Did you guys like that one? I like psychological ones like that. Did anybody like that? Or did everybody fall asleep? That's Steph. Yeah, that's what Lexi said. She said it's a mirror view. Yeah, seems like we got some yeses. Good. Carolyn, she probably went to sleep. Liked it, Kevin. Good. Great. Let's see. Oh, hold on, guys. Okay, and that's backwards. Good. I'm glad you guys like this one. And that's backwards. I'm gonna read one more, guys. Hang in there. Gonna read at least one more. Don't leave yet, Felicia. Don't leave. No, no, don't leave. Don't. Coming right back. I'm right here. Don't. Don't. Okay. The talking head. I didn't take more Ambien. I got another piece of gum. Not taking more Ambien. Took that tiny little bit. If I took any more, I'd be out for probably all day tomorrow. I can't take too much. It does hit me quick. Hits me hard, I should say. Okay, good, Felicia. Duty Ron already said he was out of here. Yes, the talking head from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. I love you too, Alicia, my boo, my foster daughter. There once lived a hunter who was so devoted to his trade that he was almost never home with his wife and two sons. The hunter had not chosen wisely when he took a wife, and his head was so full of the chase and the kill that he did not notice that she was fretful and nagging and completely unfaithful to him. Nope, not like the band. All day long, the wife would talk to her sons and yak with the neighbors and nag, nag, nag at her husband when he came home for a precious few minutes at the end of the hunt. The unfaithful wife had a series of male friends who came to visit her at the lodge, and she instructed her young boys never to speak of these men to their father. At first, the boys were too little to understand what was going on, but as they grew older, they became both horrified and embarrassed by their mother's outrageous behavior. I am tired of her talking and nagging and complaining, the elder boy said to his brother. I'm going to speak to father about her behavior. And his younger brother agreed. That night, when the hunter came home, his eldest boy took him aside while the faithful wife was outside talking loudly with their neighbor and told him the whole story. Excuse me. When the wife returned to the lodge, her nagging voice preceding her by several yards, the hunter confronted her in righteous indignation and struck her dead where she stood. And that was the end of that. The boy's paternal aunt came to live with them, and things at the lodge became peaceful for about a fortnight. Then their mother returned. Her voice woke the hunter and his boys in the middle of the night. Even before the mother's spirit materialized, they could hear her talking away as fast as she could. Moments later, she was standing at the center of the lodge, shaking her head at the pretty young aunt who was caring for her sons. The aunt trembled near the door as the glowing figure of the wife began to nag, nag, nag about the cleanliness of the lodge, the shoddy way she dressed the boys, the shameful condition of the blankets and dishes. The ghost went on and on until the hunter was forced to leave the lodge just to get enough sleep to hunt on the morrow. The boys and their aunt were not so lucky. They had to endure the ghostly mother's presence until the spirit grew bored and went to visit the neighbor's lodge. Each night, the spirit of the mother returned to talk to her sons and yak, yak, yak with the neighbors and nag, nag, nag at her husband and his young sister. It was hard to believe, but she was actually worse in death than she had been in life, and she became a source of intense irritation to the whole village. Nothing the hunter tried could rid his lodge of her incessantly prattling presence. Even the local medicine man gave up after unsuccessfully attempting to exorcise their village of her tiresome spirit. Finally, everyone in the village packed up their belongings and left. The medicine man nicely but firmly told the hunter and his boys to move somewhere far away from the tribe and take the spirit with them. The pretty young aunt patted each of them on the head and then departed with the medicine man, who had decided a virtuous woman that could put up for so long with such a tiresome spirit was good material for a wife. The hunter and his sons went south, hoping to leave the unwelcome spirit of the yakety-yakking mother far behind. After traveling for many hours, the hunter left the boys to rest beside a large waterfall while he tracked down some game for their evening meal. The boys stood watching the flight of a beautiful crane that was riding on the surface of the whirling, eddying water at the bottom of the falls. Suddenly, they heard a thump, thump, thumping noise coming from behind them. They turned and saw the grisly remains of their mother's head rolling toward them, her nag, nag, nagging voice shouting loudly to be heard over the noise of the waterfall. The younger boy stared in terror at the horrible, decaying head and then shouted down toward the crane. Grandfather Crane, Grandfather Crane, we are being followed by a terrible monster. Please take us across the falls. The beautiful crane looked up from its play. Seeing their predicament, it flew up to the boys and landed beside them. Cling to my back, it told them, but do not touch my head. The boys nodded obediently. and the crane took them up on its back and flew them across to the far shore. The head of the dead mother screamed with outrage and nagged at the crane to take it across to her sons. "Come, grandfather," the talking head shouted, "carry me across the waterfall to my poor lost children." Across the river, the boys watched with apprehension as the crane flew to the grisly, rotting head and said, "Cling to my back, but do not touch my head." The mother's head promised obedience and bounced up onto the crane's back, but the mother's spirit was as indiscreet in life as it had been in death. It was curious to know why the crane did not want its head touched. When they were about halfway across the waterfall, it bumped itself forward and tapped the crane on the head. Immediately, the crane twisted and lurched in distress, and the talking head tumbled off its back and fell screaming into the roaring water below. Here's the illustration. The head was swept against the sharp rocks, and the rotting brains burst forth from the demolished skull and flew out over the water. The crane banked and flew down toward the battered remains of the mother's head. "You were useless in life," it cried loudly. "You will not be useless in death. Become fish." Immediately, the floating pieces of brain transformed into fish eggs, which when hatched, grew into a delicate, flavorful white fish that became very popular in the region. Thus was the nagging spirit destroyed forever, and the young boys saved from persecution. When the hunter, upon his return, heard the boy's terrifying tale, he praised the crafty grandfather crane and adopted it as his family totem. The hunter and his sons settled down in the place that became known as Sault Ste. Marie, and their descendants became great hunters and fishermen who ate numerous whitefish and also rejoiced in the flight of the crane. Wouldn't that be horrible, Felicia? Ugh. And whitefish are really good, guys. I have a smoked whitefish dip here in the refrigerator that I could only find in, where was it? Down in Key West, actually. No. Was it? It was, yep. I thought some kind of fish into a dip. I don't know. But I know this here is, I believe, from Michigan. Now I'm confused. I just know in Key West, you go in the stores there, and they have these containers of fish dip. Okay, fish spread. Let's put it that way. It's so good. Up in Torch Lake, Michigan, the most beautiful lake in the world. They're known up there, one of the restaurants, for making the white fish spread or whatever. It's so good. If you've never been there, I recommend it wholeheartedly. It's like you'll think you're in the tropics. You really will. It's unbelievable. Let's see. Okay, we read that one. Did we read Followed Me Home? Yeah, we read that. Oh, you've been there? Oh, thank you, Teresa. Glad you're listening. I'm on Ambien, so I'm just reading. Took a little bit of Ambien. Thank you so much. Let's see. How about, hi, Angie. And this shish. Okay. Shish. Now that would be kind of hard to read, to pronounce. Okay, we'll read this one. The Seagull, Traverse City, Michigan. Another nice area. We stayed there on our way up to Torch Lake. The men in our family have been Great Lakes sailors for generations. Members of our family like to say that we have lake water running in our veins instead of blood. My great great granddaddy started out as a commercial fisherman, and each generation followed in his footsteps until my father broke with tradition and became a salty, traveling across the Great Lakes through the St. Lawrence River and out to sea. I took a job on one of the Lakers, a lake's bulk freighter, as soon as I got enough schooling and worked my way up to captain as fast as I could. My home port was Detroit in those days, though I did not see my wife or my home nearly as much as I would have liked. But she never complained. She was a true captain's wife. We had one child, a boy, who inherited the family love of the water. He was a better sailor than I by the time he was 10, and my wife and I were very proud when he joined the Coast Guard. I had married late and was getting on in years by the time our boy was grown. Such a beautiful state, isn't it, Steph? We've been there so many times. Gorgeous. You can find about anything there. Um, and I'd squirreled away enough money to retire early. It was not long after Charlie started his career on the lakes that I ended mine, much to the quiet relief of my wife. I'd survived one too many lake hurricanes, and we both knew I was lucky to have lived to old age. During the early spring, the wife and I packed up our things and moved north to Traverse City. We still had access to a commercial deep water port, and I ran a commercial fishing boat out onto Lake Michigan a few times a week when the mood struck me. But mostly, we relaxed, getting to know our new community, enjoying our retirement, and watching Charlie's career with pride. Then, one summer evening, I came home from a good day's fishing to find my wife waiting for me on the dock. Her body was tense with emotion and her eyes far away. Something in her attitude triggered a long buried memory. Before my mind's eye flashed a vision, little tow-headed Charlie, aged 3, slipping on the deck of our sailboat and plunging over the side. I heard again his terrified cries as he flailed in the deep water and felt the chill of the cold water as I dove in beside him and pulled him to safety. The look on my wife's face that day when she saw little Charlie plunge over the side of our boat was the same look she had on her face now, and I knew before I reached her that Charlie was dead. He'd been swept overboard in a storm and drowned. I'm not too sure how we got by in the days that followed. Charlie was our only child, and my wife and I were devastated by his loss. About 2 weeks after the funeral, I came home from fishing to find my wife standing out on the back deck, her eyes fixed on something in the backyard. Here's an illustration of the seagull. She didn't even glance at me as I joined her at the rail. She just pointed toward the water. I followed her gesture and saw a ring-billed seagull standing on the huge rusted ship's anchor that stood beside the little dock where we kept my wife's sailboat. It had been a gift to us from Charlie, who'd retrieved it from a shipwreck during one of his diving vacations. There was nothing remarkable about the bird, save for the funny dark gray patch on one of his light gray wings, but it stood unnaturally still, as its bright eyes were fixed on us, as if it wanted to speak. Like all sailors, I was fond of seagulls. Their bodies are said to contain the souls of drowned sailors who come back to help the living. Whenever a seagull landed on my fishing boat, I took it as a good omen. I brought home many a fine catch and sailed safely through many a rough sea, accompanied by a seagull companion. This bird seemed different from the other gulls I'd seen all my life, more intense somehow, as if it truly contained a living soul. After considering me for a moment, the seagull opened its beak and cried out plaintively. My heart began beating faster. The seagull's voice sounded just like the voice of my son Charlie. Oh, really, Teresa? It flew right into the house through the front window, my wife said, her voice breaking. It perched on the back of Charlie's favorite chair and called out to me in Charlie's voice. Then it sailed out the back door, and it's been sitting on Charlie's anchor ever since. I think it's been waiting for you to come home. Hearing her voice, the seagull called again and then flew toward us, settling on the railing. My wife began to tremble. Charlie, she whispered. The seagull blinked its eyes at her, bobbed its head once, and then flew in a circle around us before heading out over the lake. It disappeared into the sunset, and my wife sighed softly, as if a weight had lifted from her shoulders. From that moment, my wife's spirits began to pick up, and a little of the shadow passed from her face. The seagull, with the funny gray patch, took up residence on our anchor after that, and my wife took comfort in its presence, often bringing out slices of her homemade bread to feed it after our evening meal. The seagull would accompany her out on the sailboat, and she spoke to it as if it were the spirit of our son Charlie returned to comfort her. About 2 months after Charlie's death, I was out fishing by myself, a couple of miles offshore, when I heard a familiar cry. Looking up, I saw my wife's seagull flying quickly toward me over the choppy waves. It perched on the bow and called out, "Ma! Ma!" in Charlie's voice. I was alarmed and turned the boat at once, sure that something had happened to my wife. "I'm coming, Charlie," I said to the bird. The seagull bobbed its head and flew back towards shore. I gunned to the motor and followed it. I made it back to the harbor in record time and broke all the speeding laws driving back to the house. I shouted for my wife as I crashed through the front door, but there was no answer. I searched the downstairs for her and then heard the seagull's voice from the backyard. "Ma! Ma!" I ran out the back door and found my wife unconscious on the ground beneath our deck. with the seagull huddled next to her broken right arm, a shattered flower pot beside her, and the broken deck railing above revealed what had happened. I was afraid to move her, so I commanded the seagull to stay with her and ran to telephone for an ambulance. Then the bird and I crouched beside my wife, one on either side of her, until the wail of a siren indicated that help had arrived. At the hospital, it was found that my wife had sustained severe internal damage from the fall, and she was rushed into surgery. It was a close thing. The doctor told me in the recovery ward that I'd arrived just in time. In another half hour, she would have been too far gone for him to save her. I didn't get home to the empty house until midnight. Before going to bed, I hurried to Charlie's anchor out back. The seagull was perched there with its head under its wing. It looked up as I approached and called out, "Ma, Ma." "Ma's going to be all right," I told it. "Thank you, Charlie." The bird fluffed its feathers in delight and blinked its eyes several times. Then it opened its beak and called again. I know it sounds crazy, but I swear there were words in its cry. It sounded like the bird said, "Love you, love you." Tears sprang to my eyes. "We love you too," I said, as the seagull sprang from its perch on the anchor and flew out over the darkened waters of Lake Michigan. We never saw the seagull again. My wife recovered fully and came home a month later. To this day, we both believe that Charlie's spirit came back to us for a few weeks to comfort and protect his mother, and went away again after he knew she was safe. That is sweet, isn't it? Oh, I like that one too.
Isn't it past your bedtime?
You scared me.
Isn't it past your bedtime?
I heard you. Isn't it past your bedtime?
I don't have bedtime.
That was sweet, right? I think that'll be it for tonight. How long has it been? I can't even tell. Oh, 1 hour and 10 minutes. Yeah. It's good, right, guys? Found a couple of good ones, right? Try to be more prepared next time. That was fun. Wasn't it fun? Some good laughs. You need to have me in too. Why? The stories were supposed to put you to sleep. Alicia. No, I can't. Mom's to put me to sleep. A little scared. Yes, I loved it too. I love that story. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming to listen. Thank you. Get to sleep, Alicia. Don't be scared. Hi, Jen Grill. I don't know if I said hi. That's so nice that you take care of them, Teresa Green. That's really nice. So glad people do that. My granddaughter Amelia loved seagulls ever since she was a tiny little girl. Grandma, they're my friends. Yeah, she would say that. And one day, a whole bunch of seagulls came flying right over here, over the over the backyard, and they went to the neighbor's house and sat on their roof, like almost hundreds of them. And I took pictures. I have pictures of it. And I just know that was Amelia's spirit letting me know, hey, Grandma, everything's okay. Because that was a hard day one day. So it's a couple of years ago. Very hard. And I just stood there talking, to all the seagulls. I probably looked like a nutcase, but
We're all nutcases.
yeah. But yes, she called them Steve the seagull. Seagulls. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Love y'all.
Past her bedtime. She gets cranky right now. And you guys already know.
Not tell anybody anything new. Thank you, Mary. I'm glad. Teresa Green. Good morning and good night. That fits, yes. Good morning and good night. See you tomorrow. Carolyn's. Where's she gonna make an Easter fake Easter bunny with Davita and Lisa D.